The more female founder companies you have, the more you're going to have products that are tailored towards women's needs that are being overlooked. The founders who are successful, the founders who are being looked at both by investors and by aspiring founders are going to be highly represented by women. And we're going to have a Tech Bros community that is global. Every woman who wants to found, who is in STEM, who is in tech and in AI, know that they can reach out to other women in this community across the world.
Hi, I'm Rachel Chalmers, and this is Generationship, the podcast at the intersection of infrastructure and artificial intelligence. We are the generation that's exploring generative AI. We are a finite group of people with a finite set of resources, and we have to share this infrastructure. We have to find fair and ethical ways to do that. The first generation ship has already set sail. It's the planet Earth, and you and I are the crew. This show is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. To learn more about Heavybit, visit heavybit.com. Today, I am thrilled to welcome the Tech Bros onto the show. The Tech Bros are partners with Generationship. They are Dr. Milette Gillow, a co-founder and vision lead at the Tech Bros. She's a former VC and university lecturer in pure mathematics, as well as a professional opera singer, trained at the Royal Academy of Music. Her work with startups has taken her to Hong Kong, Berlin, Paris, Dublin, and Amsterdam. Most recently as a talent investor and later a founder in residence with Entrepreneur First. Milette has worked extensively on projects centering women throughout her career, from hackathons to panels to concerts, and recently joined the governing board of Oxford High School GDST. Milette, welcome.
Thank you.
We also have Sedinam Simpson, a co-founder and strategy lead at the Tech Bros. She is a recent machine learning graduate from the University of Cambridge, where she was a Google DeepMind scholar. During her undergraduate degree, she was awarded the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation Fellowship, through which she founded a sustainable fashion brand called Chara. She previously worked as a data scientist and in her free time enjoys attending music events and deep diving into the fashion world. Welcome, Sedinam.
Thank you.
It's brilliant to have both of you on the show. You're both such Renaissance women with a dazzling range of interests. What has drawn you to tech?
So I think what's really cool about tech is that it's so broad and it can go in so many different directions. And you can have tech with music and tech with art and tech with, the more sort of humanities side, but tech with layered on top of other tech. So I think what's really cool about it is that it's such a broad definition. It just means anything innovative, right? And anything that's exciting and new and hasn't existed before. And I think that kind of speaks to both my art and mathsy sides, that I really like creating something new. Maths is actually quite a creative pursuit for people who are very interested in it. When you're kind of writing up new proofs, you're almost building something from scratch. And in the art side as well, kind of taking something that doesn't exist and making it happen. And I think that's what tech is all about.
People don't appreciate that about math, I think. Everyone thinks that it's like algebra from high school, and they don't appreciate that at the top levels of math, you're actually creating new math. And it's very inventive. Sorry, Sedinam, I talked over you.
No, don't worry. I think for me, it's just purely from a point of curiosity. I think before entering the tech world, it just felt like a very sort of opaque, just non-transparent world to me. And I think whenever there's something unknown out there, I just want to discover more about it. So that's initially what drew me to doing my master's at Cambridge. And then further than that, stepping into this space and this ecosystem was purely from a point of curiosity. So, yeah.
Tell me the origin story of the Tech Bros.
Okay. So I can talk about this. So when I was doing my PhD, I sort of worked in VC. As you mentioned earlier, I sort of worked in Hong Kong and I worked in Berlin. I sort of paused the PhD, went to do that. And after that, I also worked in VC in London. And what I had always been told, and also when I was in maths and I was one of very few women, going at the higher levels of it, there's this line that I was fed a lot that just women are less interested. And I think especially because I was in a bit of a bubble, I was never made to feel lesser than because of being a woman in STEM. So I just was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, women are just less interested. Fine. I don't know. I just really bought that line. And then I think getting into the tech world properly when I really was starting to get into the community side of it, because my early experiences with it in VC were much more just me looking through a bunch of pitch decks. So that was still very distanced. As soon as I got more into the community, I was realizing in person, kind of seeing in real time, like live, how female founders are being treated differently to male founders on a daily basis. And it's these little micro interactions. It'll be little signals that are being sent constantly, like just, you're not quite ready, you're not quite strong enough, you're not quite, it's almost like you can tell that they're not being taken seriously in what they're saying, in the same way that these, like, frankly, quite often mediocre male founders are being taken very seriously. And it just started pissing me off quite a lot. And I was very interested also in founding in tech, and that's still something that I'm kind of interested in. But I think with the Tech Bros, the goal there was just, for a while, I've been wanting to kind of do something that is community focused around women in the tech entrepreneurship space specifically, which is very niche. Like, usually it's women in tech or women in business, but you don't have women in tech starting to found their own business. That's a very like specific niche. And I didn't see anything out there for that group. So I wanted to do something for that. But then after being on the EF program in London and not finding kind of the right person to work with through that program and the right idea and the right co-founder, and the stars didn't really align on that. And then I was like, okay, maybe instead of doing this as like a side project where it's just once a month, you know, you meet with a couple of people, maybe this could be a Y Combinator type thing. Maybe this could be big and change the entire landscape and the entire industry. And like, how big can it actually be? Let me try and go for that instead. So I then did a launch event with a friend that I was working with at the time. She was kind of in between jobs. So we ran this together, this launch event. But then she left. So then I was working alone on it. And I was like very happily, contently working by myself. And then Sally reached out as she had seen the first post for the first launch event. And we ended up connecting and started working together. And I think that's when I had been trying to find a co-founder for ages and like really struggling to find a co-founder. And I think it's kind of cool how sometimes you just fall into things just because everything just aligns and you're not looking for it, right? And we ended up realizing just how well we work together, how aligned we are on what this could be, the vision for it. And I realized personally, like, I'm doing a lot more work when I'm working with Sedi. So I feel like, yeah, we're just sort of bring out, I wouldn't say the best instincts, but also maybe the worst instincts, because we work like
I was gonna say best and yeah, best and worst, because I think we sort of like push each other to, I guess, our limits. But I think when starting anything, that's the core thing, and the important thing is to have the momentum and the drive to get things done. So that's been interesting. And I think for me, in terms of like joining the Tech Bros, I think I was looking at entering the tech space and then also very drawn to community-focused things in general. So in the intro, you mentioned like how I like music events. And I think what sort of draws me to that space is the fact that it's a community of people that all are engaged and there for a specific reason. So specifically because of this type of music or the genre of music. And the energy in that space is such like a tangible thing that you can feel. It's intangible, but you feel that like it's tangible. And I think that sort of same thing exists within the tech world. And that's what we're sort of drawing on and trying to, I guess, formulate within the space. So it's interesting because I think there's the technical background, but then I'm also drawn to community. And I think those two things and the intersection of those two things is exactly what we're building out. And to be able to engage with people at like a deep technical level and then also bring in the community and just like motivation and inspiration as well is just what makes this job so exciting.
So you ran what we all hope will be your first cohort. You got a hacker house in Norway. Tell us about the program. Tell us about the participants.
Yeah. So in terms of the structure of the program, it's an 8-week program, 2 weeks in this hacker house in Norway. So for the inaugural cohort, we had over 230 applications and we just selected 20 people. So it was super, super selective. But that means that we flew 20 people to Norway and we all lived together for this period of 2 weeks. And it was such a bonding experience and also very like interesting for Milette and I. We were cooking every day for everyone and just having like the best time. But it was really to provide focus for the cohort. So to step away from, the buzz of everyday life and all the distractions of everyday life and really just to focus on building out your MVP, chatting to customers, iterating, pivoting. And then we had touch points with them throughout the hacker house where, we would just sort of guide them and encourage them in different directions. And a lot of people walked away from that 2-week period with just a very clear idea of what they would build and how that would look. And then there was a 6-week period, which was a hybrid format. So we had people joining from across the world for this program, but we also had a base, sort of co-working base in London. And then, that was a hybrid setup. So we had hybrid workshops throughout that period. We had one-to-one mentorship where you were venture partners as well, mentoring a lot of our cohort. And then we wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago or so, with a demo day. And yeah, there's lots of inbound investor interest. So
fantastic.
There's some fantastic startups on our first cohort. So we're excited to see what the future brings.
Tell us about some of your favorite participants.
To be honest, we loved everyone. Like, we thought everyone was so cool. And yeah, there were some people who stood out in interesting ways where we like picked up some, I guess, details on how they work, which were really interesting to us, and where we could learn like, oh, this is a really important trait. So like for me, one thing that I learned was we had one participant who wanted to work in a space where she didn't really have the background for that, and she had an obvious background for something else. And I was like begging her at the beginning. I was like, please do the thing you have the background for. You could so easily do something great in that space. And she was like, no, I think I'm having this pull towards this other space. And she like is smashing it. And the reason that she's smashing it is because she is so motivated, and she is has such a bias to action. So she just makes things happen. She's like, I want this to happen, so I'm going to do it. And she's really, I think, impressed both of us. So I think seeing that in action, and, you know, when you can correlate it as well to specific traits. So I've learned as well that like the people who really have a huge amount of self-belief, how important that is. And that also just goes to show how important programs like this are, because again, you need almost like a sort of nurturing environment to start with, so that you can get the self-belief. And then before you're thrown out into the world of like the sharks and the tigers and whatever other dragon's den, you know, before you're out, you need to like have a space where you are like a cocoon almost. Funnily enough, that was the name of the first VC I worked for. It was called Cocoon. So it's like you're cocooned to begin with. But yeah, I think you need to start with something like that, and then you blossom from there. But I was really thrown by the fact that like, you know, you think, okay, well, if someone's got an incredibly impressive background, they've got all these credentials, surely like, even if they don't have a huge amount of self-confidence, they're going to make it work. But I was just so surprised that actually, I really just think drive, and like the people who are just like, I don't care what stands in my way. If there's like a stone wall in my way, I'm like bulldozing it down and like shoving people out. Like I'm gonna make this happen. That is basically the most important thing. And I thought that was really interesting to see.
Yeah. And I think also the ability to communicate and then also have charisma, I guess, when doing that is something that I saw in quite a few participants, that they are the sort of standout participants in my head. And I think because ultimately it all boils down to being able to, you know, secure that first customer, secure the investment. And a large portion of that is through the relationships that you build and your ability to hold those and I guess nurture those as well. So that's been very interesting for me to observe as well. So
I think that's a really deep point. At super early stage where it's so much about storytelling, that charisma, the combination of self-belief and persuasiveness really makes some founders stand out from the others. It's an interesting quality. It reminds me of like the process of having to defend your thesis. Like you get up there and do an oral defense of this thing that you believe that nobody else has done before.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also what was interesting for me is that I think charisma, you often associate with people who are very extroverted, but there's also such value in, even if you're an introverted person, and being able to hold that one-on-one conversation and relationship with someone in a setting that feels, I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's very interesting to see that charisma doesn't have to be in an extroverted format, but rather it can also come from someone that's a bit more reserved and quiet.
I think that's a really crucial thing that we don't communicate enough. I think the tech industry gets this really simplistic picture of you've got to be a bro, you've got to grind, you've got to do the hustle mindset. There are as many different ways to be charismatic as there are to be people. And one of the things I find working with women founders is that a lot of it is encouraging women to find their own voice, whatever that is. Is that something that you found? What were some of the lessons that you derived from this program that you're going to take forward?
There are loads of things that I feel like I learned about people, even just little things like how to set expectations with someone, whether that's a partner or someone on the cohort, when you send certain bits of information, how much information to send. There was so much operationally that had to come together for this. And it's frustrating because we were like, now we know how to do it, but now we've done it. So like we have to then do it again in order to kind of implement it. But even things just like having a contract in place and booking that many flights for that many people. Like I used to get stressed by booking flights. And by the end I was like, okay, fine, just book another flight.
I think as well, the way that we communicate. So maybe tying in with the last question, in terms of communication and relationships. And I also think Milette touched on it about how communication is such an art form. And I feel that, before I thought it was very logical and, people were reacting the way that I think they will react. But actually just not having expectations of people and how they would react has helped. And also knowing how to exactly communicate exactly the right amount of information at the right points is really, really important. And I think that a lot of what I've learned this past year of running the Tech Bros is that it all boils down to people, communication, and relationships. And how do you make that all work in synergy, basically?
Oh, no, we're going to have the computers do it for us. It's all going to be run by AI. Yeah, they're really good at this kind of nuance. What is the future for the Tech Bros?
Okay, so big picture future. We are going to be like Y Combinator. We are going to have the reputation of Y Combinator, where if someone has come out of the Tech Bros program, other investors will know that that is a company to watch out for. And we want that already to start with Cohort 1. We already think that that is the case for Cohort 1. But that is something that we would like to continue building on and making bigger and bigger and bigger, that these are going to be the next unicorns. We will have a fund. We will be investing into the companies, a sort of first check fund, and we'll be taking equity, and it'll be self-sustaining in that sense. And I think we even have noticed that some of the companies on this first cohort want to give back to the community as well. So we'll have kind of this alumni network. Last week we did an event that we ran at King's College, Cambridge, and we were chatting to some of the people who run the college and how their philanthropy works. And a lot of people who've previously been at the college really kind of care about the mission behind educating the next generation. And so that's something that if we have a lot of very successful alumni come from the program, which we absolutely think we will and already have, that's going to be, again, another stream that we can put into, whether that's doing mini programs that are even younger, more targeted towards getting school girls more into STEM and more into tech at an even younger age, or whether it's really backing those kind of top, most ambitious founders. We really see it changing the entire landscape of tech and of this kind of whole startup ecosystem, and making women who are sort of maybe even sort of an undergrad, first year undergrad, thinking, seeing who that they could become in a few years and thinking, I want that to be me. I want to, found a company. I want to be the next insert name that so many young men have now. In a more short-term sense, we would really like to do more in the US. We want to expand more to the US. We've run a couple of events here. We've started to sort of build up our network a little bit here, and we really love it here and want to sort of explore more cities and more of the ecosystem, both in SF and New York, but also outside that. And in terms of sort of really short term, we're looking for sponsorship and partners for our next cohort, but specifically for all of 2026. So we're setting up slightly differently next year. And I guess we're looking to chat to people who are potentially interested in getting involved in different ways.
You heard it here. And this has been an incredible relationship for Generationship. So as one of your partners, 2 thumbs up. It's been incredibly productive.
Thanks so much.
So I've been making mean jokes about AI, but do you use any AI in your own workflows? And if so, which tools and how?
This is maybe controversial and a bit interesting, but we actually don't. And I think I can speak from my perspective of studying AI and then also now stepping into something that's more operational. And for me, it was actually because I've never done something like this before. I've never run a company and I've never done operations at scale. So for me, it was really important to understand the manual process of doing it and actually where the cracks are in that process. And I think now that we've been doing this for a couple months or a year or so, now I understand exactly where the pain points are. And I think we're looking to build internal tools and implement some automation, going forward. But I think it's interesting because also I don't think that necessarily it has to be AI. It could just be some form of automation, at least for the beginning. So yeah, for me, it was really important to understand the manual process, the pain points, and actually know exactly what I'm solving for before I implement it. So yeah, not at the moment, no.
And what we do use AI for is things like we'll put it in deep research mode and be like, come up with a list of, potential outreach, things like that. Or we'll brainstorm with AI and come up with some funny quotes or maybe some social media stuff. But I think what's really interesting is that often we'll ask AI to write us a social media post and we won't like it. And we'll end up writing our own one anyway. And I think we started to really recognize, specifically with things like ChatGPT, what it sounds like and certain quirks. And we really, everything to do with community, in a sense, community doesn't really scale. And I know that sounds a bit kind of contradictory to what we're doing here, but it's something that like you can't just send out like loads of mass things. It has to have that personal feeling and personal touch. And so I think having something that sounds the same as like, you've just shoved something into a chat generator, it just doesn't have that personal, like, we've written this is coming from the heart. So I think it's interesting that even on that side of things, where I think ChatGPT is very good at brainstorming and it is very good at, coming up with things that kind of giving you starting points. It's almost like having an intern is what it feels like.
Yeah.
But it's having an intern who you have to correct quite a lot. You have to tell them how they're doing things wrong. And that's also quite a lot of work, to be honest. So,
and to Seti's point, you have to have a sense of what is a good practice. So you have to know the domain intimately before you can make those corrections. It's interesting how parallel that is to the way Michelle and I use AI within Generationship. It's never for public display. It's always for brainstorming and early stage stuff.
Yeah.
So following from that, do you worry that large language models are going to replace engineers? And what advice do you have for college graduates coming into this insane tech market?
The honest answer is I don't know. I don't know if LLMs will replace engineers. I think that increasingly we're seeing how much they're able to assist in terms of coding specifically. So I think for me in the short term, what I see is just a lot of engineers being aided by AI and LLMs. To what extent, I'm not sure. But fundamentally, I still think you need to have, and it goes back to what I was saying, actual base knowledge of what's even happening. And I think that is something that, at least in the short to medium term, won't go away. Like you still need to know how to correct whatever the output is. So that's what I think.
Yeah. And I think I kind of second that. And I also no one knows right exactly what the future holds, but I don't think engineers necessarily are more at risk than any other job, right? There's a lot of jobs that are going to potentially be automated. I think what really I've noticed a lot and is sort of standing out is that it's really hard for entry-level engineers right now. And I think that goes for, again, a lot of jobs. And I really don't envy the new generation who are just graduating now and going into the job market. It's just a really tough time. And I think even people I speak to who are much more senior in their jobs, they'll already say, things are already much harder now than they were when I started. And I'm even noticing that. And I'm not like super senior. So I think it's getting harder and harder for people who are entry level. The good news is it means that you might as well start your own company, right? You might as well do something that's really cool and could go really big.
Yeah, entrepreneurship feels like one of the few avenues we still have for social mobility. So
exactly. Yeah. And America honestly is it seems like such a place to do that. And it's so like entrepreneurship focused. It really feels like the land of entrepreneurs. But I think my advice that I would give to students or anyone just starting their careers is that it's less about what skills you have now and more about your ability to adapt and your ability to kind of be new at something and be bad at something. And that's okay. It's okay to start from scratch and be like a beginner. And, you don't have to be a perfect and an amazing all the time. And you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to make big switches in life because things are going to get automated and we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But that's kind of exciting, isn't it? Because it means you can figure out things as you go along. And the only thing you need to have confidence is your ability to be able to make those switches and those pivots quickly and to learn something new. So that's why we go to university. We don't go so as to learn a skill. We go and to learn a trade. We go so that we learn how to learn. So then we can apply that to like a whole range of different things.
Yeah. In the startup community, we're always talking about startups as temporary organizations that are set up as science experiments. So like, that skill of being able to pose a hypothesis and then collect data and then modify your hypothesis based on the data, that's at the core of everything we do. And I don't think AI can do that yet.
Yep. Agreed.
All of that said, and all of us agreeing that we're skeptics about AI, where do you turn to learn about it? What are some of your sources for thinking about AI?
This is very Gen Z of me. Very
TikTok.
So there's a few, there are a few Instagram creators actually that I tend to stay up to date with. So there's someone called Harper Carroll, I think her name is, who speaks about AI in short snippets and short form content. And then in terms of like new startups up and coming, there's someone called Steph, the founder, on Instagram as well that I keep up to date with. So that's the very Gen Z side of me that, uses those platforms. But then I also regularly read Substack articles, Medium articles, just to stay up to date with, like, I guess, thought pieces on AI and the direction it's going. And then on a more foundational, fundamental level, and in a more, even a more casual level, like a lot of my friends from my master's, I still am in communication with about AI and relevant things in the space. So we'll just discuss, up and coming like papers, et cetera, that have come out recently. But that is more in casual conversation, but at the same time, very foundational. So that's how I stay up to date in general with AI.
Milette?
The honest answer is I don't really. I know that's bad, but I don't really believe in following the news every day and that kind of thing. I basically think there's so much information out there, and we're in this like age of like a complete overwhelm of information to the point that people can't retain that information. There's a really interesting book about it called Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, where he talks about how the amount of information we're exposed to, I can't remember actually the statistic, but it's the equivalent of like a year we now have in like...
I think it's 72 gigabytes or something.
Yeah. It's something crazy where like in the 1800s, the amount of information you would have in a year is like the equivalent now to, what you would have in, I don't know, an hour or something. I've just made that up, so don't that fact check that. But basically it's I think so overwhelming. And actually my big challenge in life is sifting away and stripping away like all this information that's coming at me all the time. So I hear information through, for example, Sadie might mention something. And I do see things, on LinkedIn and the classic, there'll be your top 5 things, news stories of the week or on other social media. But I don't actively go out and seek something unless I'm really specifically interested in that topic, because I just think otherwise you can get so distracted. And I'm, with my ADHD, I'm so distractible anyway. I think I need really just hone in on as few things as possible. So I follow again, mostly through social media feeds and that kind of thing, but sometimes through searches and sometimes through kind of research modes and engaging, especially if I'm writing something myself, which I want to get back into a bit more, but I quite enjoy doing. I'm engaging more with kind of the women in tech and that kind of space and female entrepreneurs and how that, I don't know, how that landscape looks and whether or not the biases are, what the biases are there. So I'm like losing the plot here, but like what?
No. I want to really thank you for saying this and calling this out, because again, like the monomyth is, you've got to know everything about everything all the time. You've got to be plugged into all of the sources and always processing. And it's just not true. You don't do good work that way. I learned early in my career to carve out time on my calendar for flow.
Yeah.
And, to get off the internet and to work on stuff on my own. And to feed that time, you need to be pretty discriminating about what your information sources are. Again, I think, to your point about neurodivergence, we all have different learning styles. We all accomplish things in different ways. And I think it's really important for you to call out, well, I have a learning style that's quite different from what people think it should be.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm running the new Y Combinator and doing a really great job of it. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
All right, we've already touched on this a little bit, but in a larger frame, beyond the frame of the Tech Bros, if everything goes the way the two of you would like it to go for the next 5 years, what would the world look like?
Okay, if everything goes according to plan, especially including our place in that world, over the next 5 years, the landscape will look very, very different. Instead of it being 2% of funding that goes to all female teams, it'll be 20% of funding. There will be already some very strong success cases of entirely female-founded startups that have had either an exit or an IPO at 100 million plus. And just a couple of those can completely change the landscape already, because that suddenly gives a new role model, not just for kind of the young women who are looking, what do I do next? I could be like her, but also for investors, because frankly, investors need role models. I think Mark Zuckerberg did a lot for kind of the nerdy community, and Bill Gates as well, like the nerdy male white community in the US. It made it much easier for those people to be seen. And that's awesome. I think that's really cool. And I think as soon as you have one example of someone who represents a certain group, then there's this thing that investors do a lot called pattern matching, where they go, I can see this person, and this person reminds me of these traits that this person has. And that is so male coded right now. And it means that they miss so much female talent. And so in the next 5 years, if everything goes according to how we're envisaging it here with Tech Bros and also beyond, there's going to be some archetypes, some female archetypes of what female genius looks like in that sense, that investors can then pattern match to and think, okay, yeah, I can see that this founder reminds me of this founder. Maybe she's really actually going to be really huge, instead of just dismissing it. Because the thing is, all it takes is a couple of cases, and that changes the whole ecosystem. A couple of success cases means that those founders can back the next generation of founders. They can kind of help support and fund and believe in the next generation after them. But again, they can also act as these role models. And so that also helps to back the next generation after them. It also is the case that female founders tend to employ more women. So in the whole landscape, and then also in terms of the products actually being made, if you've ever read Invisible Women, that was actually one of the big inspirations for me to start the Tech Bros, is that I was reading this book, and first of all, I was getting very angry. But second of all, there's so many products that could exist. Like, if any women are listening to this and are thinking, what can I build? I really want to build a new startup. Read Invisible Women. There are about 50 different product ideas in there that are needed and that currently no one is catering to, because people aren't building with women in mind, and and that can extend to kind of, I guess, any other subgroup. But if you have a very specific group of people who are doing all the new innovation, they're going to build it in their own image. And so they're not going to be catering to everyone's needs. So yeah, in 5 years' time, that's going to, I mean, maybe 5 years is too quick for that to already be happening. But I think the more female founder companies you have, the more you're going to have products that are tailored towards women's needs that are being overlooked. In 5 years, the whole landscape in terms of the products being built, the founders who are successful, the founders who are being looked at both by investors and by aspiring founders, are going to be highly represented by women. And we're going to have a Tech Bros community that is global, that, really encompasses every woman who wants to found, who is in STEM, who is in tech and in AI, know of us and know that they can reach out to other women in this community in any kind of the major cities across the world.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think I just echo everything that Milette has said. I think specifically about the product point I was going to mention as well. But I think, yeah, exactly to your point, just products that cater for, the whole society. You'll see that existing. So yeah, nothing else to add to that.
Last question, favorite question. If you had your own generationship, a starship that takes longer than a human life to get to its destination, what would you call it?
Okay, I feel like this is not very creative of me because I'm just ripping off Pixar, but I would call it Axiom, because I think it's a great name for anything kind of foundational, and it speaks to my maths background, and also I love WALL-E. So
love an axiom. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think for me, I don't know the exact name, but something to do with like symbiosis in some way. So something to do with like humans and whatever technology we create, or whoever we are with, just working in like sort of perfect harmony. I mean, that's kind of what I envision, but an offshoot of that.
Harmony?
Harmony, maybe.
Oh, that's beautiful. That brings the music in as well.
Yes, yeah.
Sedinam, Milette, a joy to have you on the show. I can't wait to see what the future brings for the Tech Bros. Let's talk again soon.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
That's all we have time for today. If you're interested in being a guest, or if you know someone awesome I should interview, hook up with us online. We're available where all fine social medias are sold. This show is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. To learn more about Heavybit, visit heavybit.com.